Thank you very much for logging on to Great Television. You are live on G News in Brief with me, Jeremiah. Before we give you the details, a recap of the headlines. In Zimbabwe, post-Mugabe Zimbabwe receives first UN envoy. And in our second story, thousands of migrants return home safely from Libya as part of UN-supported program. Professor Stephen Hawking dies at age 76. And in Sierra Leone, presidential poll enters into a runoff. And Google co-founders flying taxi takes to skies in New Zealand. Trump sacks Rex Tillerson as state secretary. We'll be right back with the details after this short break. Keep watching G News in Brief. We'll be right back. Welcome back from this short commercial break. Now the details of today's G News in Brief with me, Jeremiah. Achim Steiner, the United Nations Development Programme's UNDP's administrator, is in the first UN official to visit Zimbabwe after the end of Robert Mugabe's presidency over 37 years. Steiner will visit the South African country from Thursday right to Sunday. Steiner, who is also the vice chair of the UN Development Group, will meet President Emmerson Dambudzo in Nangagwa and other senior officials, including the two vice presidents and the ministers of foreign affairs, justice, lands and agriculture, environmental, as well as the health, among others. He's meeting up with them for a negotiation. Thousands of migrants return home safely from Libya as part of UN-supported program. Since last November, 10,171 migrants have safely returned from Libya, the United Nations Migration Agency announced on Tuesday, crediting the achievement of a scale-up of its voluntary humanitarian return (VHR) program. We are continuing to assist migrants inside Libyan detention centers while increasing efforts to reach stranded migrants outside of detention. And Othman Belbisi, the chief of the International Organization for Migrants IOM mission in Libya, said. In the same period, another 5,200 migrants have returned with African Union AU's support. In our third story, a sad story about Professor Stephen Hawking, who dies at age 76. Stephen Hawking has died at age of 76. His family has said. The British world-renowned physicist was known of his work with black holes and relativity and wrote several popular science books, including A Brief History of Time. We are deeply saddened that our beloved father passed away today, a family statement said. At the age of 22, Stephen Hawking was given only a few years to live after being diagnosed with a rare form of motor neuron disease. The illness left him in a wheelchair and largely unable to speak except through a voice synthesizer. In a statement, his children, Lucy, Robert, and Tim, said, "We are deeply saddened that our beloved father passed away the early hours of today."
Professor Stephen Hawking has died at the age of 76, a spokesman for his family said. In a statement, Professor Hawking's children, Lucy, Robert, and Tim, said, "We are deeply saddened that our beloved father passed away today. He was a great scientist and an extraordinary man whose work and legacy will live on for many years. His courage and persistence with his brilliance and humor inspired people across the world. He once said, 'It would not be much of a universe if it wasn't home to the people you love.' We will miss him forever." His family released a statement in the early hours of Wednesday morning confirming his death at his home in Cambridge. "We are deeply saddened that our beloved father passed away today. He was a great scientist and an extraordinary man whose work and legacy will live on for many years," Hawking's children, Lucy, Robert, and Tim, said in a statement. His courage and persistence with his brilliance and humor inspired people across the world. He once said, "It would not be much of a universe if it wasn't home to the people you love." We will miss him forever. The English physicist was known for his groundbreaking work with black holes and relativity, and was the author of several popular science books including A Brief History of Time. Hugh is also the subject of Oscar-winning film The Theory of Everything in 2014 and performed several cameos in the U.S. comedy series The Big Bang Theory. The famed physicist contracted motor neuron disease in 1963 when he was 21 and was given 2 years to live. But he the odds and studied at Cambridge, where his work saw him become one of the most highly regarded theoretical physicists since Albert Einstein. More to come. Professor
In Sierra Leone presidential poll enters into a runoff. Sierra Leone voters will be called upon again to cast ballots to elect a new president. The March 27 runoff date was announced by the National Electoral Commission (NEC) on Tuesday evening after declaring the final results from the March 7th vote. According to the results, the main opposition, Sierra Leone People's Party (SLPP), led the first round with close to 1.1 million votes, followed by the ruling All People's Congress (APC). Given that none of the top two candidates got the 55% mark, a runoff was required by law within 2 weeks of the final declaration.
You're always on time. Yeah. We don't help for us.
We're hoping for the better, and I believe that we've reached a stage where people are so matured now they can make meaningful political decisions, and we must respect the views of the majority of Sierra Leoneans.
Thank you. Okay.
To let the people know that all is not well. There are still issues that are fundamental that have still not been addressed. And these issues will, at the end of the day, determine whether these elections are credible or not.
Google's co-founders flying taxi takes to skies in New Zealand. Kitty Hawk, the Silicon Valley startup backed by Page, said it is building and testing all-electric vertical takeoff and landing product in New Zealand. It released footage of one of those vehicles in flight, billing it as a cross between the DeLorean from Back to the Future and the Jetsons hover car dubbed Cora. The vehicle can take off like an helicopter and transition to flying like a plane, Kitty Hawk said in a statement on Monday. In our final story, Trump sacks Rex Tillerson as State Secretary. U.S. President Donald Trump has sacked Secretary of State Rex Tillerson, replacing him with the Director of the CIA, Mike Pompeo. Thanking Mr. Tillerson for his service on Twitter, Mr. Trump said that the new State Secretary would do a fantastic job. Mr. Tillerson, a former chief executive of ExxonMobil, was only appointed to the job just over a year ago. And the president also nominated Gina Haspel to become the first woman director of the CIA. A senior White House official told the BBC about the timing of the announcement, and the president wanted to make sure to have his new team in place in advance for the upcoming talks with North Korea and various ongoing trade negotiations. We'll be right back with our transport news shortly. Don't go anywhere. Back from this short commercial break. We are still watching G News in Brief with me, Jeremiah. And now onto our TFL news update. Currently, we have been notified that the Central Line has some parts suspended and some minor delays on the Central Line. But apart from the Central Line, all the underground lines are working effectively. Bekelu Line, Circle Line, District Line, Hammersmith City Line, Jubilee Line, Metropolitan, the Northern Line, Piccadilly, as well as Victorian Line are all working without any delay, operating a very good service. Now, we'll be bringing you the details of the weekend closures due to engineering works from tomorrow as well as Friday. But from our news, we have the DLR that will have some part closure on Saturday and also on Sunday, and also same applies to the London Overground. There will be some part closures on the DLR, the London Overground, both on Saturday and also on Sunday. There will also be some part closures on the Metropolitan Line as well over the weekend, and also the Piccadilly Line will also experience some part closures as well. But the details as to which lines and then which particular stations will be closed, we'll be bringing that to you tomorrow and also on Friday. Before we take a leave of you on today's G News in Brief, a recap of the main headlines. In Zimbabwe, post-Mugabe Zimbabwe receives first UN envoy. And thousands of migrants return home safely from Libya as part of UN's supported program. Professor Stephen Hawking dies at age 76. And then in Sierra Leone, the presidential poll enters into a runoff. And Google co-founders flying taxi takes off to the skies in New Zealand. And Trump sacks Rex Tillerson as state secretary. Thank you for watching today's episode of G News in Brief, live on Great Television with me, Jeremy.